Ladies and gentlemen, we now turn to the screen for a message from the Honourable Anthony Albanese, Prime Minister of Australia.
One of the great strengths of Australian democracy is our bicameral parliament. Two great chambers of the people, the Senate and the House of Representatives. They are a study in contrast, but ultimately they complement and balance each other. As impressive as that is, Australia has long benefited from an even greater example of the duality of power, Dame Edna Everage and Sir Les Patterson, two halves of the one extraordinary whole, two contrasting figures who ultimately balanced each other. And if Dame Edna represented the refinement, the consideration and the style of the upper house, Sir Les was, without doubt, the lower house. It's probably safe to say there was never a house any lower than Sir Les. Yet just as Parliament ultimately answers to the Governor-General, Dame Edna and Sir Les also answered to a higher power, Barry Humphries. No matter how unruly his creations became, it was Barry who had the final word. And what a word it was! Barry had the ultimate power, a power he exercised with a glee that never knew any bounds. Just like this place, he brought people from every state and territory together. And, in the process, this genius, this comedic giant, brought such joy to every part of Australia. Then, like a never-ending bunch of gladioli, he showered it upon the world. Vale Barry Humphries.
To read a message on behalf of His Majesty, King Charles III, would you please welcome Minister Tony Burke.
It almost sounds like a line from the show to say I have a message from the palace, but I do in fact have a message from the palace. And it's my great honour to read this message on behalf of His Majesty the King. His Majesty was a great admirer of Barry Humphries, and these words are more beautiful than any I could choose. I suspect that all those who appeared on stage or on TV with Barry's Dame Edna, or who found her appearing at the back of the royal box, will have shared that unique sensation where fear and fun combine. Those who tried to stand on their dignity soon lost their footing. Those who wondered whether Australia's housewife superstar might this time just go too far were always proved right. No one was safe. Barry Humphries, through his creations, poked and prodded us, exposed pretensions, punctured pomposity, surfaced insecurities, but most of all, made us laugh at ourselves. This cultured and erudite man, with his love of literature and the visual arts and passion for Weimar cabaret, could not have been more different from his various stage incarnations. Like so many, I have been deeply saddened by his passing. Life really won't be the same without him. May our gladioli bloom in celebration of his memory.
When I was 16, I saved up to go and see Barry Humphries on stage in Back with a Vengeance. I sat upstairs with the paupers, and it was the funniest show I'd ever seen in my life, and remains the funniest show I've ever seen in my life. I loved it so much that I saved up even more money and sat near the front so I could see this genius at work. And it was a real light bulb moment for me. It was the moment that I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to wear a dress. And if I make people laugh, that's the bonus. Later in life, I got to befriend Barry, and spending time with him was one of the greatest pleasures in my life. He was as funny off stage as he was on stage, and that can't be said about many comedians. He has left an incredible legacy that will make us laugh forever.
Barry Humphries was one of the funniest people in the world, but you all know that. But he's also one of the kindest and most generous person to me. We always hit it off. We always got on so well. We've had so many moments together, both public and private, and many television appearances together. And I will miss him so much because he was just one of the most funniest people. His stories, like Robin Williams, like Billy Connolly, he was a raconteur of incredible importance and genius. It's sad that we won't be seeing him again, but we have so many memories of him, his books, his TV appearances, and the wonderful jokes and the wonderful kindness that he showed to me and everyone. I hope you all have the most wonderful day there and celebrate with laughter, because that was what Barry was all about. Bless you.
It's impossible to overstate the brilliance of Barry. It's also very difficult to sum him up. He was the most remarkable man who had the most remarkable life in, as Les would call it, the arts. From his Dadaist performance art beginnings, subversive, moving into theatre, then dominating Saturday night mainstream television, but infusing it with such sly, clever, sophisticated wit and satire, to conquering the West End, to conquering Broadway, to his tours in later life of America, finally conquering that great home of entertainment. From a distance, before I knew him, there was something intimidating about Barry, his wit, his sophistication, his love of art, his love of books. And then when I got to know him, I was so shocked and delighted to find this remarkably vulnerable, sensitive, and giving human being that it became my great pleasure to know as a friend. And I was lucky, if that is the word, to spend some time with him in the last weeks of his life when I was touring Australia. I got to visit him, and as upsetting as that was, it was also wonderful to know that he knew what people thought of him. Family and friends were able to see him and speak to him and tell him what he meant. And what he meant was a huge deal. He was the best. He was the master. There is nobody better than Barry Humphries, and I was honoured to call him a friend, and I salute his talent, which was just interstellar.
In 1976, Barry Humphries, or perhaps more accurately, Dame Edna Everage, attended Royal Ascot races in the UK. The event is famous for its very strict dress code, and Dame Edna tackled this formidable set of rules with a hat the size of an umbrella and a model of this Sydney Opera House perched on the top. A breaching shark jumped out of the Sydney harbour that completed the ensemble. The hat was one of many fashion choices to reference this building, from bespoke spectacles to the iconic Sydney Opera House dress worn on the last night of the proms at Royal Albert Hall, that sparked Dame Edna to say to the Poms, "Our house is better than your hall." Barry loved this building, and no one wore it better than him. The Sydney Opera House is a fitting place to say our goodbyes to Barry, not just because of its sails or its dramatic exterior, because of what's inside, the stage. And it was on that stage before an audience where he was most at home. This is an excerpt of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's The Fire of Driftwood, which was one of Barry's favourites. "We sat and talked until the night, descending, filled the little room. Our faces faded from the sight, our voices only broke the gloom. We spake of many a vanished scene, of what we once had thought and said, of what had been and what it might have been, and who had changed and who was dead. And all that fills the hearts of friends when first they feel that secret pain, their lives thenceforth have separate ends and never can be one again.